Chapter 3 Allies. The Kashna government is losing their will in this war. It has gone on too long. We need to bring it to an end, or they might become tools for the Night of Night, and that will bring our people to their ultimate downfall. Stanley Kashon, in an impassioned speech to the Zayan warriors before setting out for Zurian space. The edge of Upper Zurian space, Second Galaxy. Stanley Kashon stood on the command deck of the Kashna destroyer Suran, as it hung in deep space with a dozen other ships like it. The vessels were pearly white and stood out starkly on the inky darkness of space. They were saucer ships, with a dome on the top and the bottom. Windows glowing with light from inside the ship dotted the pallid hull, and one of the windows on the upper dome belonged to the command deck where Stanley stood. The lower dome glowed with blue light and served as the propulsion of the Suran. At 4 points on the rim of the saucer, there were broad, enormous rectangular openings that looked in on bright hangar decks. The starfighters that those bays held were only part of the ship's defenses, because across the hull were powerful weapon systems. The Stellar-class destroyer was a match for the best starships in the 4 galaxies, even the Kashna ships from the first galaxy. Stanley, a tall, white-skinned Kashna man with beautiful carved features and a flat nose and silver cat-like eyes, should have felt comfortable on the Suran. And staring out at space, at the border of Upper Zuria, wasn't helping him feel any better.
They put invisible lines in space and call them borders.
Nej, a fellow white-skinned Kashna said, stepping up beside Stanley, his green cat-like eyes glinting. He was shorter than Stanley and was clean-shaved, with dark hair. Stanley's hair and beard were white.
The problem is, the Upper Zurians take this stuff very seriously, the elder Kashna pointed out.
You really believe they mined in 3 dimensions around the borders? Nej asked, cocking a hairless eyebrow.
Everyone who's gone to find out has never returned,
Stanley pointed out, turning his eyes to his friend. Nej's ears twitched.
He grumbled.
The men were silent for a moment. Then Stanley glanced around the command deck as the men and women of Suran's crew worked, moving about the round bridge. Most of the beings were Kashna, but Kashna space was vast, and like the Kashna Republic, it had many different races within its borders. At the helm was a male Nuv. He was a hairless green-skinned alien with yellow eyes and an overlarge cranium, which was behind a bubble-like transparent steel helmet connected to his environmental suit. The suit was dressed in the black and white colors of the Kashna Navy. He had the insignia on his chest and his lieutenant pips on his shoulders. Next to the helmsman was a Kashna woman. She had silvery eyes like Stanley, and her expression was as grim and serious as he felt. All Kashna were sleek, beautiful people, compared sometimes to Ilurians. The chief science officer of the Suran, another non-Kashna, was a fierce-looking four-armed man with spiral cone-like horns on his head and a beastly face that was part bear, part ape. He was a Uther, from a planet of the same name. The engineering chief and comms woman of the Suran were Kashna, and the rest of the bridge crew for that matter. Stanley was serving as fleet captain on this mission, and Nej was his first officer. A Zayan warrior of some renown, Stanley had also brought his Zayan warrior team with him. If they were able to get to the planet Jangyeon, he might need them on the ground. Getting to Jangyeon was the trick, though.
Commander Umag,
Stanley said, turning to face a fierce-looking Uther man at the main sensor station.
Any reading on those mines yet?
No, Umag replied, his voice pleasant, musical, nothing like you would expect given his appearance. If they exist, the rumors that they are cloaked might be true. How the blazes do they rate that sort of tech? Pody wondered at the navigation station, her fin ears folding against her head. Her hair was long and silvery.
The Krum Empire, Nej reminded. They have an alliance, as you all know.
Pody nodded and sighed.
What do you want to do, Captain?
Nock the Nuv asked, in a low rumble of a voice, his yellow eyes concerned.
We could try and run the line, but if there are mines, this mission will be for naught.
And if we can't get to Jangyeon, Stanley said grimly, and stop the Daughter of Night, we could lose our home, our whole star kingdom. And turning around isn't really an option either, Nej winced.
We didn't exactly leave Kashna with permission. I doubt we'd be welcomed back. But if we can end this war, Stanley sighed. He looked at his crew. We've all taken risks. We'll all take more. The old warrior sighed again. Everything had been going so quickly. He'd left his wife and children behind on Kashna, hoping to create a future for them. There was only one way he was going home. They had to succeed. Do you want more time scanning for the mines, Umag? Stanley asked the Uther. I would, the alien man responded. I may be able to pick up on trace energy. We should try really hard to be sure before we leap. Stanley nodded. I'll give you the rest of the day. Then we move. Umag nodded. Yes, sir, he said. Stanley looked to Nish. You have the bridge, Commander. Yes, sir. Stanley headed for the doors at the back of the command deck. They slid open for him, and he headed down a bright white hallway. He clasped his hands behind his back as he walked, his thoughts deep and troubled. We have to succeed, he told himself. We have to. Kashna, Second Galaxy. Thad Vesser looked up as someone called out his name. The afternoon was growing long in the Kashna capital city, Tau. The white towers that made up the great sprawling metropolis glinted in the late afternoon sunlight, and the sky was clear, blue, like it usually was. Broad green meadows surrounded the great city, and sloped down toward green forest. A river wound down from the northern Aru Mountains, cutting through the city, and it continued down through the forest. It was so beautiful here. Thad was on an open balcony off the side of a tall white building on the edge of Tau. The former Zayan warrior had set up an economical healing clinic for refugees fleeing the front lines of the war with the Krum 10 years ago. He'd been working out of it since then, long, taxing days. Without seeking it, the clinic had started to get some notoriety for the good they were doing, and the intrusions of the media were becoming tedious. Hurrying across the balcony was a paper-white Kashna woman, smaller than Thad, with black hair, dressed in a long gray nurse's gown. A small matching hat sat atop her head, between her fin-like ears. Following closely behind her was a grumpy-looking human man dressed in a dark suit. The man was pale, but not so much as the Kashna, with green eyes, and followed closely by a pair of Kashna military men who towered at least a head over the grumpy official. Thad could tell government types a light yev away. Thad Vesser, the man in the suit said briskly as he stepped up to the Kashna man. I am, Thad responded. Who are you supposed to be? Galed Beeve from the President's staff. I'm sure you're aware that 2 days ago a dozen Zayan starships went missing. I don't keep up on the news, Thad said, motioning to the people on the balcony around them. They were an assorted group, from all across Kashna space, and some people even from the enemy Declori star kingdom. The Declori had been forced into aiding the side of the Krum in the conflict. So many people were caught in the middle. Inside Thad's building there were more people still. Most refugees were being checked out by doctors or given supplies to help them set up in the camps. Parents looked tired and afraid. Children huddled close to them. Thad remembered when his boys had been that young. I find that hard to believe, Galad said with a sneer, especially since it was your former Zayan teacher, Stanley Kashon, who led the ships away. Stanley? Thad asked in surprise, cocking a naked brow. Are you sure? If you have any information on where Mr. Kashon is taking our ships, you are obliged to tell the government, Galad snapped. Come clean, Mr. Vesser. Save yourself a lot of trouble. Thad narrowed his eyes at the thug. I work in this clinic from 4 in the morning to 22 at night. Then I go home, spend what little of the day remains with my wife, and finally collapse into bed so I can come here and do it again. How dare you come here making threats to me? When was the last time you spoke to Stanley Kashon? Galad snapped. Last weekend, Thad said, baring his fangs, ears folding back. And at that time, did he mention to you his plans to take the fleet and where they're going? No. Galad frowned. Clearly he didn't believe Thad. And you expect me to just take your word for it? The government man chuckled. I don't know what you're supposed to take, Thad snarled. You came here, and unless you have better grounds than I'm friends with Stanley Kashon, You can't take me in. Now, you are on private property, gentlemen. He held up a hand and a group of burly Kashna men stepped over. Each of the brutes were former Zayn warriors. They glared down at the government man and the soldiers with threat in their yellow eyes. This is not over, Galad snapped at Thad, pointing at him, before turning and marching away. Come on! He shouted at the soldiers, and they turned to follow. Thad watched them go. Cheru, he said to the nurse who'd led Galad in. I'm sorry, the woman said, bowing her head to Thad. They forced their way in. It's okay, Thad assured her, smiling. Take over here, will you? He turned and motioned to the tallest of his security, the former Zayn warrior Rago, a muscular man with short black hair and a matching goatee, walked with Thad toward the building. Call in more people. Quadruple security. I don't want that man in here again. Yes, sir, Rago agreed. Thad nodded sharply and continued into the clinic. He made his way through the press of crowds to his office. He closed his door behind him and locked it. Then he moved to his desk and pulled open a drawer. He drew out a secure comm and triggered it on. A moment passed. After school special, a man's voice said on the other end of the line. Rats are in the kitchen, looking for crumbs, Thad responded. There was a moment of silence. Understood, was the simple response. Thad sighed and switched off the comm, putting it back in his desk. Closing his eyes, he leaned back in his chair and laced his snowy white fingers in front of him. I hope you know what you're doing, Stanlin, he whispered to himself as the sun started to sink on the horizon outside. I really do.
Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, and share with your friends, and there are more episodes on the way.